Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we discuss if LeBron James playing with his son, Bronny James, is a historic moment in time or a publicity stunt. Why are we talking about this? Well, LeBron and Bronny obviously played their first game together on Tuesday night. Bronny played like four kind of forgettable minutes. He missed a three and then he missed like a putback dunk. But other than that, just kind of like a very forgettable performance. Lakers ended up winning that game over Minnesota. And the reaction to after this game by some media members was pretty negative, and they were scrutinizing the fact that, you know, LeBron and Bronny are playing together and that it's supposed to be this historic moment. Notably, Mad Dog Russo went on First Take and he threw a temper tantrum about it, said no one cares about this, and then called it like completely fake. I saw Michelle Beadle said that it was all manufactured and it was completely ridiculous. Other people were calling it a publicity stunt. And I think kind of the best way to talk about this to start off, I'll give you guys kind of my reaction to this whole Bronny thing and kind of take you through my thoughts on it throughout the whole process. So obviously we did a video about this in January where we kind of noticed that there was a mock draft by ESPN that had Bronny undrafted. And I came on the show and I was like, hey guys, he's not ready to play in the NBA. The idea that he's going to leave college early it's not going to happen, because this guy is basically, the gist is like, this guy is an undersized guard that has very limited offensive skills and can't shoot and doesn't show much potential to improve his shot if you just look at his percentages. So that was basically kind of the gist of it. It was kind of shocking that he, entered the draft at all, and then he ends up getting drafted. Now, the philosophy of him leaving college early, there is two kind of differing philosophies when it comes to this. There's kind of like the older school philosophy. It's like, hey, if you're not ready to go to the NBA, stay in college as long as you possibly can, especially now with like NIL, you can still make money in college. You know, previously it's like you couldn't make money in college, but it's like, stay in college for another year, come back, enter the draft the next year. You might have higher draft stock. You might get drafted higher. You're going to make more money on your first contract. But then there's this kind of newer school philosophy. Now, not everyone does this, but there's a segment of players that have done this, guys that actually been drafted by the Lakers. And there's this philosophy of like, hey, the best way to prepare for the NBA, to get yourself ready for the NBA, is getting the NBA as early as possible and developing in the NBA. This is what the Lakers did notably. I don't know if you see the sign behind me, Talon Horton-Tucker from Iowa State and Max Christie from Michigan State, who is on their team now. And if you ask Michigan State fans, you can ask me as an Iowa State fan, none of us thought that Max Christie or Talon Horton-Tucker were ready to make the jump from college to the NBA just after 1 year, but they ended up developing in the Lakers in the G League and on the bench in limited time with the Lakers for a few seasons on their second round contract. Both ended up signing extensions with the Lakers. I think Max Christie's was like a few million more than Talon Horton-Tucker's, but it's kind of a differing philosophy. It's like, hey, is it better to stay or is it better to go? So Bronny leaving, that's obviously the idea if you're talking about his best developmental process. Again, I'm not telling you which way is right. I'm just telling you the actual thought process of Bronny, the logical thought process of Bronny leaving college early to go to the NBA, even though he didn't show us that much at USC. So that is kind of the philosophy here. Kind of the whole moment, though, of Bronny getting drafted. I didn't think that was as sentimental of a moment as some people did. I think ESPN really played it up on their broadcast. I thought that was probably the cringiest moment of this whole Bronny thing, because I can't remember if it was somebody on ESPN on the desk there, or maybe it was someone close to Bronny that kind of said something, oh my God, he's worked so hard for this moment. And it's like, yeah, I don't think he's obviously a good kid. I'm sure he's worked very, very hard for this moment. But just because you worked hard doesn't mean you get what you want. I work really hard on this show. That doesn't mean I get the amount of views that I want. That doesn't mean I get the amount of subs that I want. You people out there, you probably work really hard for your goals in life or your goals in your career. That doesn't mean you always achieve your goals just because you work hard. So I didn't necessarily like that specific comment, but I will say when they actually walked on the field, or excuse me, on the court together Tuesday night, I did think it was kind of cool. I was kind of like, oh, this is kind of like a sweet father-son moment. They obviously, I kind of thought it was cool when LeBron was mic'd up. Now, did I think it was like the coolest thing in the world? Is this going to be something where I tell everyone where I was like, was it one of those moments, like this insanely cool moment that I'll remember where I was, and I'll always remember this moment of them bracing the court uh, for the first time together? No, no, it wasn't that, but it was cooler than I thought it would be. Okay, so that's kind of my whole thoughts when it comes to this stuff leading up to today, and this has been my whole thought about LeBron and Bronny and this whole thing. It was maybe gonna. This has been my kind of my take on it the whole time. This is gonna be something that people kind of are kind of like either don't care or kind of just gonna rip in the moment now. But I do think as time goes on, 10, 15, 20 years from now, people are gonna look at this and be like, oh, this was pretty cool that they got to do this thing. I do think it's going to be something that ages better with time. And I also think, too, another thing, the reason that people are having this negative reaction to this right now is because they look at the Ken Griffey Jr., the Ken Griffey Sr. moment that happened in 1990, and they say, oh my gosh, that seemed like way more organic. That seemed way more authentic. And then all this Bronny thing, the Bronny LeBron thing seems very like, staged and, unauthentic. I'm here to tell you this, guys. This is something I heard on a podcast. I don't know where the saying came from, but there's a saying that is basically like, hey, history never repeats itself, but it does rhyme. And if you go back and you read the stuff about Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. playing together, that was 100% a publicity stunt. 100%. If you actually go back, because I was doing a bunch of research on this, if you go, I think it's like the Baseball Hall of Fame, like the third sentence in that talking about Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. playing together is the manager having a quote being like, this isn't a publicity stunt, bro. Publicity stunt? What do you mean? What do you mean? It was 100% a publicity stunt. To take you guys back into time, 1990, Ken Griffey Jr. is a generational prospect. He's on the Seattle Mariners, and his dad is playing in the major leagues at the same time for the Cincinnati Reds. He plays like 2/3 of the season for the Reds. Ken Griffey Sr. is www.wash.com at this time, is batting like 200. And from my understanding of reading about Ken Griffey Sr. in books about the Reds in the 70s, dude wasn't necessarily the best to get along with if you're talking about reducing his role or anything like that. And the fact that he wasn't playing that well, the Reds decided to cut him. By the way, the Cincinnati Reds ended up winning the World Series that year. So like maybe you would think maybe they would like the useful skills of like, a crafty veteran. Nope, the Cincinnati Reds cut Ken Griffey Sr. in the middle of the 1990 season. And if Ken Griffey Sr. did not have a son in the major leagues at that time, that dude's career would have been over. It would have been over. And the Seattle Mariners, who have Ken Griffey Jr., who were a franchise that was around at the time for, I think, 13 or 14 years, a team that had never made the playoffs, a team that was historically terrible and still is historically terrible, was struggling to sell tickets, was struggling to have good publicity. They decided, like, hey, we could sign Ken Griffey Sr. and have him play alongside his son. This will be this historic moment. This will be kind of like a gimmick that we can have to sell tickets and get people to come out to the ball games. And it worked. It worked. And even too, in a way, it's more egregious. Now, again, I'm not talking about the machinations of making it happen, but like the Mariners literally put Ken Griffey Sr. They had them batting like second and third in their lineup next to each other, even though Ken Griffey Sr. was 40 years old and washed. They had them like batting next to each other, even though Ken Griffey Sr., wasn't that good anymore. So obviously, kind of like I said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. I understand it's a different kind of like, machinations of making it happen. And the fact you could talk about the merits of, Ken Griffey Jr. being this generational prospect and Bronny being this guy that, got drafted at the end of the second round. And if, his name wasn't LeBron James Jr., he would not have been drafted at all. That doesn't mean he would never get drafted. But for this moment in time, he would not have gotten drafted. And again, at the time, it was a publicity stunt with the Griffeys. But now we look back on it now and we're like, oh, this is like this really cool moment. It's really cool that they got to play together. And even though they were they hit next to each other in the lineup, the fact that they had back-to-back home runs was really, really cool. And that's something that's going to keep aging better with time, just as it has. And again, getting back to my original point, that's why I think that the Bronny LeBron thing is just going to age better with time. It's going to be really cool in 10, 15 years of these guys over the next 2, 3 years at the end of LeBron's career. If they end up having moments where Bronny throws him a lob, or if LeBron assists Bronny, and they have these moments, these fun, they get to celebrate on the sidelines together. They get to do handshakes together, because those are the things that we will remember in history. We aren't going to remember, or most people are not going to remember the minute, minuscule details when it comes to this. We're just going to remember, oh, LeBron. We're not going to remember what Bronny did at USC. We're going to be like, oh, LeBron played with his son. Here's some like photos of like them like playing together, joking on the sidelines. Here's them, assisting each other, throwing alley-oops to each other. And that's going to be the stuff we remember. We're not going to remember about how he got drafted, how he did at USC. We're just not going to remember that stuff. Now, I know people are going to be mad that I'm saying that in the comments, but I promise you that's all people are going to remember when it comes to this stuff. To the thing about Bronny being on the Lakers, everything people says is true. I don't know why people get so mad at that, though, because we do have nepotism in sports all the time. If you are a person that has a lot of power, a lot of say with a team, if you're one of the best players in the league at a time, or one of the best players ever, you're just going to get more influence, and you're going to have people, do things for you and do things the way that you want to do. I'm sorry, you might not like it. You might not think it's cool. You might not think it's right or has any moral integrity, but that's how the sausage is made, buddy. And this has been a thing that has been going on in professional sports for decades now. Do I have to remind you guys about the Antetokounmpo brothers? Do you guys think that they deserve the right into the NBA? Or was it a thing like, hey, this one Antetokounmpo guy is good. Let's try his brothers. Let's sign him to the Mavericks, and maybe that'll make Giannis at one time, request a trade to come to us. Maybe if he's on the Lakers, maybe that'll make, Giannis want to request a trade to the Lakers. Thanasis was on the Bucks for like several years, even though he wasn't that good of a player. This is the thing that happens. Guys, if you go back to like the 50s, 60s, the Yankees signed all of Mickey Mantle's brothers to their teams. Mickey Mantle's brothers were not good at baseball, but they're like, yeah, we'll give them jobs, and maybe they're related to the Mantles, maybe something we'll develop here with some of these guys. This has been a thing that has been going on in sports with a while. I'm not up in arms about the LeBron Bronny thing. I don't think you should either. I think it's just honestly just a waste of energy. And when there's so many other things that you can get worked up about in time today, getting worked up about this is stupid. And again, I don't blame you for thinking the way that you are, that like, hey, I'm not going to view this as some like big, important, impactful historical moment in the time. But I am telling you that, like, I don't blame you for feeling that way, because I don't feel that way right now. But I'm telling you just how these things will age. And especially if Bronny turns into being like an NBA player that's like in the league for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, maybe even a decade, then this is something, these moments that they have together over the next years, I'm telling you, we're gonna forget all the minuscule details. We're gonna forget all of what Bronny did at USC, and what he did in the summer league and stuff like that. We're just gonna remember, the good times. We're just gonna remember the highlight reel, because that's all you're gonna see on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever. So that's basically my reaction to this whole Bronny LeBron thing. Thank you very much for watching. If you got this far in the video, you're an absolute real one. Please go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And if you like this video, hit that like button. Subscribing to the channel is the #1 thing you can do to help us support this show, and it costs you absolutely $0, and I will love you forever if you do that. So thank you very much for watching. Feel free to check out other videos on the Sports Detective Podcast channel page. We talk NBA, we talk NFL, we're talking college hoops that's going to be starting soon. We're going to be talking college football, as we've been doing all year, and just check out the channel if you like that stuff. So thank you very much for watching. We'll talk to you next time.